and welcome to Be Inspired, a podcast brought to you by Blue Balloon Theatre. I'm going to be your host today, Rebecca Fithian. I'm the founder and artistic director, and we are here live, well, not quite live, but we're here in Manchester delivering this podcast to you as we chat to creatives from all around the world about their journeys, about their experiences, and hopefully by the end of it, you'll feel really inspired to, I don't know, maybe pursue a new path, a creative path, or even a creative dream of yours. And today, this is going to be a fantastic podcast because we are chatting to a writer from all the way over on the other side of the world. She's in South Korea at the minute, and we've had to match up our times to make this happen. But welcome, Jiye Lee. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Despite the time zone.
I know, like we were chatting about this just before the podcast, and where you are is 8 hours ahead of UK time, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, so what time is it here? So it's about 10 o'clock here in the morning. So that would mean, I'm not very good with maths.
Oh, it's fine. Same. It's 6 p.m. here.
6 p.m. Amazing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, by the time we finish this, it'll be your probably dinner time, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
God. Well,
whereas your morning is about to get started.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've just jumped out of the shower, ready to start the day. So, I mean, thank you so much for joining me today. I've been very much looking forward to this because in our second season of this podcast, we wanted to reach out to people, creatives especially, beyond our immediate creative community. And we put a call out on social media and you got in touch. And just reading what you've done as a creative, I was like, oh, I'm intrigued. I can't wait to chat to this girl. So, I mean, where do we start? I feel like let's chat about you, who you are and what you do as a creative.
Okay. I'm Jiye. I am a writer, poet, and creative writing mentor. I'm from Newcastle, although I did spend my teenage years in Malaysia as well. So I call England my first home, but Malaysia would also be my second home. I think my main field at the moment is poetry, but I am looking into doing more non-fiction work in the future. Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's really cool. And what was it that sort of brought you into writing? What sparked your interest about it? Because I feel like everyone's got a moment in their life where they go, I want to pursue this.
Yes. Yeah. I wish that had been kind of like a straight path, but it never is. I think I always had a love for reading since like an early age. I would just kind of fall in love with books and stories. And so literature was a big part of my life. And, growing up, my parents couldn't really speak English that well. So I had to find stories in different ways, whether that be through a book or like the back of a shampoo bottle or like a fairy tale cassette tape. So I think I loved stories and language from an early age, but it was actually in university in my final year. So I was studying literature and film studies at the time. But it was the first time in my final year that I took this one module called creative writing. I had no idea like what to expect. And it was just the first time I read, I guess I had known of poetry before, but that was the first time I encountered poetry or was introduced to it properly. And I kind of got a taste of what this creative writing thing was. And also, what was a turning point for me from that class was, I think I always had this, what's the word, misconception that good writing had to be, you know, like flowery, articulate language, and you had to write like Shakespeare. And a professor was like, no, good writing is simple language and accessible to the people. And that was when I thought, oh, okay, then maybe I have a chance at this. But yeah, I think that module kind of planted the seed in me. But it actually took about a long while for me to actually pursue my dream of writing, just because life got in the way. But yeah, that was when it started.
Amazing. That's so interesting. And I completely agree. I mean, just from a personal experience, when I was learning about poetry at, say, high school in the UK, like, it's sort of very, as you say, very flowery, very sort of pretty. It feels very surface level. And I was like, oh God, this is boring. I don't like it. And then it was only years later at the Edinburgh Fringe where I heard sort of spoken word for the first time and went, oh wow, this is not flowery at all. Like this is real life. And I completely agree with you. That I think that was the moment for me where I was like, oh, okay, maybe I can do this.
When was that? How old were you?
So, oh God, I think I would have been 22.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have been 22, 21, 22. And I mean, yeah, it was, I feel it happened at the right time. Because I then started writing about the experiences I'd had as a teenager and things like that. I didn't share them for a good few years. But then when I did, which was last year, I don't know. I think it was the right time because I was appreciating it a lot more than, say, if I was a teenager sharing it, it wouldn't have had the same meaning to me. But anyway, I digress.
No.
So, obviously, you went through that, and like you say, life gets in the way sometimes, doesn't it? You know, when you want to pursue something, often there'll be barriers, there'll be things that you come up to face that you go, oh, you know, maybe now isn't the right time. So when was that moment where now was the time, if you get what I mean? When was that?
Yeah. So I think after that module, there was kind of like a deep-seated desire in me that wanted to pursue writing professionally, and at the back of my mind, I wanted to do a master's in writing and all of that. But actually, after graduating, I came to South Korea for the first time, which is where my parents are from. And I worked here for 4 years as an English teacher. I think it was in my third year, I kind of decided, okay, I should, pursue what I want to do, and I should go into writing now. And that same year, my father unexpectedly passed away. So, that was just kind of the moment where everything changed. And it was just very complicated. My parents were living in Egypt at the time. So my parents had kind of lived a bit all over the world. So just in terms of the legal affairs, there was so much stuff to deal with. And also, he didn't leave a will. So there was just a lot more, again, complicated things that we had to deal with. And I just suddenly had to, step into this role of like the breadwinner and caretaker for my mum. And my sister was still a university student at the time, so she couldn't really do anything. So yeah, my mother came to South Korea to move in with me, and I continued working to provide for both of us. But I think that was when my writing really kind of became a lifeline for me, dealing with that kind of loss. And I mean, I was confused, I was angry, and I just felt like no one could understand what I was going through. And at the same time, there's like this eldest daughter Korean culture thing where you have to be strong, and you have to, have you have a duty to, take care of everything. And so I had to kind of push that writing, all that, put that on hold. And I worked for another year until the point that I actually got some health issues. Some health problems came in the way, and I had to quit my job and deal with some surgeries. And it was also at that point I realized life is too short. So I applied for a writing master's back in Newcastle. And fortunately, I got it. But my mother had a hard time accepting that decision. And also she had a hard time accepting the fact that I was, leaving her. So I deferred it, and I went another year later. So I just felt my pursuit of this dream kept kind of being pushed back and pushed back. But finally I did. I finally went back to the UK in 2018, and I did that course. And whilst that course was great in terms of gaining new wisdom and knowledge about the craft, I didn't realize that I had bottled up 2 years of grief. Mm-hmm. And so it was whilst I was in England on my own doing this master's in writing, that all of this kind of grief exploded. And it was a bit ironic because I had to do a creative writing course whilst being on medication that numbed my creativity. So that was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
But I think, looking back now, I think that was the right time. Mm-hmm. I think I needed to have had that outburst, and I needed that, I don't know, maybe some people would call it catharsis, whatever. It was such a struggle, but I needed that time to process kind of all the events that had happened, and also kind of, if everything before that had kind of been just writing, ranting, writing, that was a period in which I could turn that mess into a form of art and learn how to shape it into art. So yeah, I would say
that's quite a journey, to say the least.
Yeah.
Dominic. Well, first and foremost, kudos to you for being able to look back on it now and say, actually, yeah, that was the right time, and you've been able to turn quite a difficult time into, as you say, art, and your anger, your frustrations, your upset, you've managed to now turn that into art and into sort of pieces of work, which you should be very proud of. That's
thank you.
Blooming egg. Oh dear, it's hard, isn't it? Just listening to you, I already admire you immensely, because you've still pursued what you wanted to do despite what you went through. But yeah, wow, that's amazing. And your writing since then, how do you feel like do you feel it's changed? Do you feel it's become a little bit more structured, or is it still very much a coping strategy as well as an art form for you?
Wow, what a loaded question. I think it's a bit of both. Definitely it's changed from what it used to be. It used to have no structure whatsoever. It was just like emotional ranting, I suppose. But yes, now I think much more about the structure, more about the form, the placement of the words. And I think I am still searching for my voice. It is there, like my voice is there. But just as I am learning more and more and growing, my voice is also constantly evolving. If I look at my writing from 3 years ago to now, I guess because of certain events that have happened, there's a different depth to it now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I guess a little bit of it is hindsight, I suppose, because 3 years forward, you've got a completely different outlook on things that have happened within your life, and I suppose that's quite nice in a way to be able to recognize that within your work. I know mine certainly. If I looked back to 4 years ago, I'd go, oh man, I'd be like, what, Becca, what were you doing?
Yeah.
But it's nice in a way to have that and to be able to, so as I said, sort of recognize your development as an artist. So touching upon your writing and your style of writing, is there anyone or anything that inspires you as a writer and as a poet?
Ooh. Anyone? Or do they have to be a writer?
It can be anyone, yeah.
Well, if I start with certain writers, I would say I am quite obsessed with Ocean Vuong and Ada Limon, and Sarah Kay. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I do recognise Sarah Kay.
Okay.
But I'm intrigued to know the others.
Yeah. Ocean Vuong is a Vietnamese American poet, and his mother immigrated to the United States when he was very small. I guess he in his own words says he is a product of war, the Vietnamese War, because his mother, he was fathered by an American soldier.
Okay.
But there's a duality there in that he has his Vietnamese heritage and he also has his American heritage. And I guess I can kind of relate in the sense that I also have this duality to my identity of like this Korean heritage and British heritage, and that kind of the clashing of those two cultures, and the way he articulates language is just like phenomenal. I don't know how he does it. So yeah, he really inspired, like his works really inspire me. And also Ada Limon, she has lots of just kind of like female empowering poems that I love. and her language is also very beautiful. So, yeah, I wouldn't. My style, I would say, my style. I think it's very raw and very, I don't know, melancholy in a way, but also distinctive. I try. I mean, I'm always trying to experiment with different words, but yeah, I guess it's kind of dark, emotional, melancholy, raw. Yeah, but nuanced at the same time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. You should definitely come to one of our open mics.
I would love that. I would really love that.
Yeah. That would be amazing.
As long as the time zone works out.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's always the issue with these open. Yeah.
Well, we could do one at 10 o'clock in the morning. I think that'd work.
Right. If anyone is up at 10 in the morning.
Yeah. Usually me, usually recording a podcast. No, that's it. It's a difficult question, isn't it, when someone asks you, oh, what's your style of poetry? What's your style of writing? Because everyone's is so uniquely different, and to be able to sort of describe it in just a few words is like an impossible task, because one piece to the next it can change ever so slightly. So but yeah, that it gives us a good idea of sort of your writing style, and sort of I love hearing people's inspirations for writing, and just as people as well. Like, I find it fascinating. It tells you a lot about a person, I think. But yeah, it's really interesting as well. I'm intrigued to talk about you going back to do your masters, because that's something that I know for me personally, I've toyed with the idea of doing a masters many times, and I've always gone, oh, well, I could do this or I could do this, and then I'm like, oh, I just don't know. But for you, did that feel like, yeah, this is definitely the right option? And what do you feel? I mean, you touched upon it slightly before, but what do you feel you gained from doing that? Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I totally see your point, because in the beginning as well, I was like, is it worth it? There are writers who have, become writers without even having a master's. But I think for me, it was the right decision, and I kind of needed to know the formality. Like, if I had been writing since a very early age, like 7 or 13, maybe it would have been different. But I feel I came to writing later in life, like in my late 20s. So I felt that I needed to know the formalities and the technicalities of poetry in order for me to appreciate it more, and also understand it more, and for me to be able to write this professionally. Although, interestingly, I was not great academically. I mean, I guess because of the place I was in at that time, and I was in a very bad state, maybe that also contributed to the grades. But I wasn't like, top student or anything. And my mates would be like writing her essay like the night before the deadline, and she'd get like an amazing score, and I'd be like, what? How do you do that? But funnily, whilst doing that master's, kind of doors of opportunities outside opened up. Like, I'd go to perform in a spoken word night, and I'd get invited to another one. And yeah, that was just so surreal for me that I didn't know there was this scene outside the academic aspect of it. So I think the masters, if I hadn't done that masters, maybe I wouldn't have stepped into that writing scene or spoken word scene, because I wouldn't have had any other way or someone to introduce that world to me. So I think that's what I gained from it. I think I gained a writing community from it. Of course, yes, knowledge of the craft too, but I think more so it was I came to gain a very warm-hearted writing community that I didn't know existed in the Northeast. So
yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I was reading something just a couple of days ago about the sort of writing courses and how accessible it is in the Northeast. And I was like, I thought, I didn't even know that these courses existed or that this community was there. But that's amazing that you were able to find that, throughout your studies. I'm intrigued to ask this question. You've just kind of inspired me, because obviously you grew up partly in the UK, and you've obviously done your studies there. But in terms of poetry and in terms of writing, what is the sort of writing scene like now where you are in South Korea as opposed to the UK, would you say?
Oh. To be honest, I don't think I know enough about the poetry scene here. Because Korean is my second language as well, I'm still struggling with the language itself. I know there are poets here, but I think poets like worldwide recognition level poets. However, I would have to say, in my personal view, or at least of what I have seen, maybe it's limited. The poetry world seems a little bit more niche here, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Not as accessible, I think. I think that Korea is trying, like the literature scene, they are trying to foster more cultural events and more literature kind of, a love for literature. But it's still very hard to see, like, just, an average person reading a book of poetry. Yeah.
That's so interesting. I don't know why that question came to mind, but it was just with you talking about the poetry scene in the UK, especially in the Northeast, and I was like,
right.
I wonder what the differences are.
Yeah. I don't think there's really a spoken word kind of thing here.
Okay.
Like, especially in Korean. I've never seen a spoken word night in Korea. Like, they'll have poetry readings for sure, but I've never seen someone on a stage, being like aggressively spitting in the mic.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
it's always like, yeah. What's the word? Manicured.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. Oh, wow. I would be really interested, just for myself, to read like some Korean poetry. I'm going to look into that after this podcast. Ooh. I think, because
I can send you some.
Please do.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing. Because I really enjoy reading different poetry from different cultures, and because obviously growing up in the UK and sort of becoming interested in poetry from English poets, you can sort of pick out similarities in them all. Whereas now I feel like I'm at a point where I want to delve further. I want to see what the differences are, and the similarities too within different cultures' poetry. So yeah, that'd be amazing. Thank you.
That's really good. That's really good that you want to go further and
yeah, no, absolutely
extend that boundary of
yeah, that's it. I mean, I'd love. I mean, we were chatting at our last open mic. We were chatting to a poet who's from, I think he's from the Philippines, and he was somewhere else in the world. It was about 4:00 in the morning for him, and his poetry was so. It was magnetic. It was mesmerizing in every way. I loved it, and I was like, wow, this is poetry from a completely different culture to mine, and I'm just fascinated by it. And I think that was a bit of a turning point for me personally, where I was like, yes, I need to, I want to look into this. But yeah, crazy. Well, I am going to wrap up the podcast gradually now, because we've talked about so much. But one thing that I did want to ask was, based on your experience, both in life and as a creative, is there anything that you would perhaps recommend to fellow writers out there, or maybe people who are just getting started?
Yeah, I think, well, for me, what I struggle with the most is, two things. The first one is very intrusive voices of other people and also mine, telling me like, oh, you're not going to make it, you can't write, or And then the second thing that I struggle a lot with is when I go through periods of writer's block, and some people say it's not a thing. It is a thing. And they're just completely dry periods where, like even last year during the pandemic, luckily I had my first debut pamphlet published this year in March, but last year, that whole period, I was just squeezing my brain for like creative juice. It wasn't appearing. So my advice would be, when you do go through those periods or moments of doubting yourself, don't try to fight it. Like I would fight so hard. I would go to a cafe, sit down, get my laptop out and be like, just write, even when I couldn't. And if I didn't write, I'd feel so unproductive, and I'd felt like I'd wasted a day because I hadn't written something. And I think I was being a bit too harsh on myself. And I think even, emerging writers especially will do that because it's so hard to see their talent if they feel that there's no outside validation. So I think for a long time I kept trying to fight that. And recently I'm just kind of like, if it's not coming to you, it's not coming to you. And I will spend that time with the world instead. I will go for walks. I will meet new people. I will meet old friends. I will listen to other people's poetry. I will read other people's works and not get so frustrated about it not coming. I think that actually drains you more of your energy and your the ability to create. So it would be that, and to not take those voices seriously. Like, you need to have the belief in yourself first, rather than taking on all the other voices that these people, label you. So yeah, that would be my advice.
No, it's sound advice, and I completely agree. I had that a few days ago. I was trying to write a new piece, a new poem, for a submission that I'd been asked to do, and I was sitting there for a week going, think of something.
Yeah.
And I was like, Becca, what are you doing? I was like, it's not coming. You need to stop. And as soon as I stopped, took a moment, took a breath, went outside, didn't force it, that's when it came. So I was like, right. Lesson learned.
It's so much harder when you have like a deadline as well.
Yeah,
like
it is.
To work. Right.
Yeah. But no, really, really good advice, I think, and definitely for emerging writers and perhaps people who are getting into this industry for the first time. I think that is sound advice. Thank you so much, Jiye. This has been such a lovely chat. Where can we find you on social media if we want to follow you, etc.?
You can follow me on Instagram at very dramatic handle, Write or Perish, or jiye-lee.com. I also have a Twitter account. I don't use it regularly, but you can find me on Twitter. I think it's Jiye21, Jiye Lee 21, maybe.
Amazing.
Yeah, that shows you how like infrequently I use it. Those three would be the main spaces that Instagram especially, I think.
Yeah. And is your pamphlet on your website?
Yes, it is.
Amazing. Cool. Yeah, I'm so excited. Well, once again, Jiye, thank you so much for joining me today. And to anyone that's been listening to this podcast on Spotify, Anchor, or wherever you get your podcasts, thank you so much. Do follow us on those platforms because you'll stay up to date with our latest episodes. And if you've been watching on YouTube, thank you for watching. Leave a like and comment on the video and subscribe. Honestly, we've had an absolute blast so far recording these episodes for season 2, and we really hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Once again, Jiye, thank you so much for joining me, and have a lovely rest of the evening.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. See you soon.